Hello, dear ones. It is I. And there you are, already in bed, I see. Shall we just take a moment to enjoy our hot beverage as we climb into bed? Hello, Sally. Hello, Johnny. Johnny, did you enjoy the postcard you got this month? I decided to save the humor of climbing into bed and already be in bed so that we are in bed together. We've been in bed this whole time. I have made a stronger beverage choice this week. This is a bulletproof cup of Constant Comment by the Bigelow Tea Company. Highly recommend. Well, it's Monday again, and here we are. I am broadcasting to you, as usual, from Chickahominy and Powhatan Land, here in what is now called Virginia, near Richmond. What's curious to me about Richmond is that no one lived here as a city. White people thought that they should build a city here, but the native peoples didn't. It was a border region between the Monacan and the Chickahominy and the Powhatan and a few other tribes. The fall line in the James River, where the continental shelf begins to break and slide into the Atlantic, was not a place of permanent large settlement. It was a hunting ground and it was a meeting ground, but it was borderland. And so I think this city is a little confused about why it's here and what it wants to be. That's my impression of it anyways. I am glad that the mic is sounding good tonight. I am wearing my lapel and I am speaking softly, which I've learned is the lapel's preferred way of me speaking. It will probably be better for my voice as well. Iced H29. What? Oh, is that H2O? I don't know what H29 is. So, dear ones, now that we've have our beverages, now that we've climbed into bed, and I hope you're wearing something stunning to get you in the mood, it's important to dress for bed. We can speak a little bit about what's coming down the pike and what we can do this evening. For the next 2 weeks, there will be no GlamourHobo bedtime tale because I will be in Ireland. I will send you postcards from Ireland if you're a patron. And I thought about doing a show from Ireland, a Monday night show, but I just don't think it's feasible. So if something happens, it'll be a flash surprise. I have music coming out soon. My very first release of original music that has been recorded in a studio of sorts. And I'm excited about that. It's my 2 singles will drop in the holiday times, December 21st and 25th. And I think I might be able to give you a sneak peek of what it sounds like, if you would like. Let me know. There'll be some fiddling on the laptop to make it possible, but we can try. Of all the people to be able to thrive in a land full of ire, I think I am the best. Let's see. What I can share with you. I can't speak to the quality of the audio, which is what I'm worried about. But I might be able to share screen. It usually asks me if I want to also share audio, so I'm a little worried. Oh, goodness. I really don't know if it's gonna work, friends. I'm sorry, this does not make for good. Oh, I know why. History. Aha! Figured it out. What could go wrong? Thank you everyone for being patient. This is we're feeling darkness in our DNA. A penchant call from history that whispers light won't stay. Warmth and sun and confidence. Kiss it goodbye, my dear. It's the last good past your lips. The shadow eats the year. Hide inside our Yuletide monsters, cower beneath their skins. Their horns and claws and forked tongues will glamour o'er our fears. That this is it, the end is here. Ourselves a memory to shout. Our bones and breath still cloud the air out. Burning hearts now burning out. Don't worry, dear one. There is a way out, and it is through. Convince yourselves in gorgeous sweets. Fatten up that psychic boundary. Just a piece. All right. That was just a bit of a taste. Um, I I don't know how I feel about it yet. I listened to it on my really good headphones, and I'm actually a little bothered by it. So this is my first time working with a producer who I've never met before, and really just a producer doing this kind of work. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about it yet. I don't know. Um, which isn't good. I was really hoping that I would hear it and go, "Oh, I love it. Is that me? I can't believe it." But mostly I'm just going, so I have to get through that. Hopefully in time to release it in a week. I got some news over the week that the original recording that we did of it, I had to re-record the vocals because of a glitch, and so I still have to do that. Maybe I'll do it in the middle of the night. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Who knows? Sally says, "Good job on the advent calendar videos." I didn't work on the advent calendar videos. I helped set up the camera and tell her where to put up the lights, but I did not shoot them. But I will pass on your congratulations to Madame Onsa and Paulo, who produced them. My deadline is the day I leave. It's actually the day after. It's on actual solstice, so that's the point. This first song, Maybe It's Cold Outside, is about winter solstice and the coming darkness. And so I wanted to release it before solstice, but I just don't think that was realistic of me. And so I hope that it goes well. I hope that some people buy the tracks or contribute to it in some way. Frankly, I feel very unprepared about the whole thing. Um, that's a weird feeling. Anyways, and thank you for the compliment about the lighting. Let's move on. Darlings, it's time to do our Lenormand story. You know how this works. I need 3 numbers between 1 and 36 because we use the Lenormand divination deck in order to build ourselves a story right here. 3. 2 more. 2 more. Just shout them out. The ship. 4. The home or the mansion. And 1 more. I'm counting on either Johnny or Twitch or Sally to help me out here because they are our gallery this evening. I could probably just do it with 2, frankly. Oh, let me pick one. 19? Oh, 19. They say 19. The Tower. All right. You did. You tied. All right. 3 archetypal cards to be turned into a story at this very moment from my brain and from my heart. Mm. I don't have to tell you that being in the bowels of a boat is not a pleasant place. You don't want to be there under any circumstances, but this trip was it. This trip was the one that nearly got me, that nearly sunk me, that nearly pushed me to the bottom of the ocean. I signed up hoping to see the world, and I thought, why not? What easier way? I don't even have to pay. They'll pay me. Just get on the boat. Three-master, going across the ocean. All the oceans I hear. I wasn't paying too close of attention. I was trying to get out of Dodge pretty fast, if you know what I mean. Climbed aboard. We set sail. I was exhilarated. I was filled with brine. Seriously, it's never been so salty in my entire life. I was born on the inside of the country that used to be an ocean, I hear, and now is just plains. But this one day, we had been out for months. Months, I tell you. We had been around islands. We had seen storms. We ate so much fish and so many oranges. They said it was important to keep off scurvy, and I kept saying, have you ever met a kiwi? A kiwi has 16 times as much vitamin C as an orange, but that's all we had. I learned how to juggle. I learned how to make hats out of fruit skins, bones. Fish bones do make very good needles, but that's not the point. The point I am trying to make here is about the bowels of the boat. Now, if you've ever been on a boat, you may remember that it feels completely different than anything you've ever felt in your entire life. Because if you're used to living in a house made out of bricks on the ground, something comfortable with indoor plumbing, something where everybody can hide in their own corners, where you could walk out of it and keep going and perhaps even come back. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. It's not solid. It's not corked. A boat is a home, but it's also a moving journey. It's kind of like it's too many nouns all at once because it's your home, but it's also your means of transportation. It's where you stay while you go. It's wet constantly, salty. I mentioned the brine. You're crammed in with all of your other crewmates and anybody else who might be on the boat. You're never alone. Never, 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 never alone. There is no time for alone. There is no alone. You can't walk away. You can't go for a stroll out onto the ocean. They don't let you take a boat just to get away for a little while. So I was looking for a place to hide. I needed some time to myself. I had thoughts in my head. They were spinning about my life choices. I wasn't quite sure. And so I said I would do bilge duty. Nobody else wants to do it. That means no one would be around. And when I was down there, it was dark. It was quiet. I appreciated that. Nobody's snoring. Just kind of the general sloshing of the bilge. And then I found this tiny, tiny little flag. And I was like, what is there a flag here for? That makes no sense. And I kept looking. And the flag was on top of this stone. And the stone was just haphazardly, seemingly, on top of these other kind of heavy rocks. It's what helps keep the boat from flipping over. It's nasty. It's disgusting. And it's kind of like the bottom of a river in hell. The cold parts of hell. The smelly parts of hell. And I kept looking. I was like, why is there a flag? What is this tiny little novelty-sized thing? And I realized it's not a pile of stones. It's a tower. Honest to snake God, it's a tower. Someone had built that and put that tiny little flag right at the top. And I said, why? Why? Why would anyone do something like this? Who would need to see above the crust sloshing around in the bilge of a boat on the ocean? What is there to look at? There was a civilization living in the bilge. This was their citadel. It's a tiny flag right on top. And I have to tell you, I just had a small nervous breakdown, just the smallest, as small as the flag, because I couldn't handle the fact that there was an entire civilization of some kind of creature being able to construct things in an architectural fashion with purpose and skill, living, choosing to live in the bilge. And I was the giant god that had come to scrub them. What do you do with that information? Thankfully, I spared myself the embarrassment of freaking out in front of my crew members because I was alone, the entire point of me being in there in the first place. So I decided to keep my secret. I kept my secret. I suspect other people knew about it too, but I felt like we were bonded in our quiet. And the suspicion really it gave me something to do in the long, long hours. But I'm afraid to go back. I don't wanna know if they've built more towers. I don't wanna know if they have literature and music. I don't wanna know if they have cuisine. It's a bilge. Just let it stay a mystery. I wonder what they think of us. And that's it. That is our story, our Lenormand Story for the night. Travel, the ship, number 3. Travel, movement, perhaps even a physical ship. Number 4, the mansion or the house, known for its solidity, its uh, everything having to do with domestic life and familial structures, predictability. And the tower, number 19. The tower is about far-reaching view, institutions, and seeing into the possible future. There you go. Ta-da! That is our story for the week. Well done. Haven't done one in the first person yet. All right, Darwins. All right, darlings. It's up to you. Are we doing Dune? Or are we doing Station 11? I think I talked about doing Station 11 in the new year. And us finishing Dune. Not finishing it, but finishing out the month with Dune. Thank you, Sally. Oh my god, I forgot how many voices there are in Dune. Where are we? Okay, I found our spot. Ready? If you're just joining us, my name is Carmel. I almost spilled my tea. My name is Carmel Clavin. I am your GlamourHobo bedtime tale teller. Here on Monday nights, we spill some tea. We build a story together using the Lenormand divination deck, and then we read from some classic sci-fi or fantasy. And we are in the midst of DUNE. If you are nourishing the service, please drop me a tip at the bottom spots. You have read that Muad'Dib had no playmates his own age on Caladan. The dangers were too great. But Muad'Dib did have wonderful companion teachers. There was Gurney Halleck, the troubadour warrior. You will sing some of Gurney's songs as you read along in this book. There was Thufir Hawat, the old Mentat master of assassins, who struck fear even into the heart of the Padishah Emperor. There were Duncan Idaho, the swordsmaster of the Ginaz, Dr. Wellington Yue, a name black in treachery but bright in knowledge, the Lady Jessica, who guided her son in the Bene Gesserit way, and, of course, the Duke Leto, whose qualities as a father have long been overlooked. From A Child's History of Muad'Dib by the Princess Irulan. Thufir Hawat slipped into the training room of Castle Caladan, closed the door softly. He stood there a moment, feeling old and tired and storm-leathered. His left leg ached where it had been slashed once in the service of the old Duke. 3 generations from now, he thought. He stared across the big room, bright with the light of noon pouring through the skylights, saw the boy seated with back to the door, intent on papers and charts spread across the L table. How many times must I tell that lad never to settle himself with his back to a door? Hawat cleared his throat. Paul remained bent over his studies. A cloud shadow passed over the skylights. Again, Hawat cleared his throat. Paul straightened, spoke without turning. I know. I am sitting with my back to a door. Hawat suppressed a smile, strode across the room. Paul looked up at the grizzled old man who stopped at the corner of the table. Hawat's eyes were 2 pools of alertness in a dark and deeply seamed face. I heard you coming down the hall, and I heard you open the door. The sounds I make can be imitated. Imitated? The sounds I make can be imitated. I know the difference. He might at that, Hawat thought. That witch mother of his is giving him the deep training, certainly. I wonder what her precious school thinks of that. Maybe that's why they sent the old proctor here to whip Our Lady Jessica into line. Hawat pulled up a chair across from Paul, sat down facing the door. He did it pointedly, leaned back and studied the room. It struck him as an odd place suddenly. A stranger place with most of its hardware already gone off to Arrakis. A training table remained, and a fencing mirror with its crystal prisms quiescent. The target dummy beside it patched and padded, looking like an ancient foot soldier maimed and battled in the wars. There stand I, Hawat thought. Thufir, what are you thinking? Paul asked. Hawat looked at the boy. I was thinking we'll all be out of here soon and likely never see the place again. Does that make you sad? Sad? Nonsense. Parting with friends is sadness. A place is only a place. He glanced at the charts on the table. And Arrakis is just another place. Did my father send you up to test me? Howat scowled. The boy had such observing ways about him. He nodded. You're thinking it'd have been nicer if he'd come up himself, but you must know how busy he is. He'll be along later. I've been studying about the storms on Arrakis. The storms, I see. Sound pretty bad. That's too cautious a word. Bad. Those storms build up across 6,000 or 7,000 kilometers of flatlands, feed on anything that can give them a push. Coriolis force, other storms, anything that has an ounce of energy in it. They can blow up to 700 kilometers an hour, loaded with everything loose in their way, sand, dust, everything. They can eat flesh off bones and etch the bones to slivers. Why don't they have climate control? Weather control. Arrakis has special problems. Costs are higher, and there'd be maintenance and the like. The guild wants a dreadful high price for satellite control, and your father's house isn't one of the big rich ones, lad. You know that. Have you ever seen a Fremen? The lad's mind is darting all over today, Howat thought. Like as not I've seen them. There's little to tell from the folk of the graben and the sink. They all wear those great flowing robes, and they stink to heaven in any closed space. It's from those suits they wear. They call them still suits that reclaim the body's own water. Paul swallowed, suddenly aware of the moisture in his mouth, remembering a dream of thirst, that people could want so for water that had to recycle their own body moisture struck him with a feeling of desolation. Water's precious there. Howat nodded, thinking, perhaps I'm doing it, getting across to him the importance of this planet as an enemy. It's madness to go in there without any caution in our minds. Paul looked up at the skylight, aware that it had begun to rain. He saw the spreading wetness on the gray metaglass. Water, he said. You'll learn a great concern for water. As the Duke's son, you'll never want for it, but you'll see the pressures of thirst all around you. Paul wet his lips with his tongue, thinking back to the day of a week ago and the ordeal with the Reverend Mother. She too had said something about water starvation. You'll learn about the funeral plains, she'd said. About the wilderness that is empty, the wasteland where nothing lives except the spice and the sandworms. You'll stain your eye pit to reduce the sun glare. Shelter will mean a hollow out of the wind and hidden from view. You'll ride upon your own 2 feet without thopter or ground car or mount. And Paul had been caught more by her tone, sing-song and wavering, than her words. When you live upon Arrakis, Kala, the land is empty. The moons will be your friends, the sun your enemy. Paul had sensed his mother come up beside him away from her post guarding the door. She had looked at the Reverend Mother and asked, Do you see no hope, your reverence? Not for the father. And the old woman had waved Jessica to silence, looked down at Paul. Grave this is your memory. Grave this on your memory, lad. A world is supported by 4 things. She held up 4 big-knuckled fingers. The learning of the wise, the justice of the great, the prayers of the righteous, and the valor of the brave. But all of these are nothing. She closed her fingers into a fist. Without a ruler who knows the art of ruling. Make that the science of your tradition. A week had passed since that day with the Reverend Mother. Her words were only now beginning to come into full register. Now, sitting in the training room with Thufir Hawat, Paul felt a sharp pang of fear. He looked across at the Mentet's puzzled frown. "Where were you wool gathering that time?" Hawat asked. "Did you meet the Reverend Mother?" "That truth-sayer witch from the Imperium?" Hawat's eyes quickened with interest. "I met her." She... Paul hesitated, found that he couldn't tell Hawat about the ordeal. The inhibitions went deep. "Yes? What did she?" Paul took 2 deep breaths. "She said a thing." He closed his eyes, calling up the words, and when he spoke, his voice unconsciously took on some of the old woman's tone. "You, Paul Atreides, descendant of kings, son of a duke, you must learn to rule. It's something none of your ancestors learned." Paul opened his eyes and said, "That made me angry, and I said my father's rules an entire planet, and she said he's losing it, and I said my father was getting a richer planet, and she said he'll lose that one too. And I wanted to run and warn father, but she said he'd already been warned, by you, by mother, by many people." "True enough," Howat muttered. "Then why are we going?" "Because the Emperor ordered it. Because there's hope in spite of what that witch spy said. What else spouted from this ancient fountain of wisdom?" Paul looked down at his right hand, clenched into a fist beneath the table. Slowly, he willed the muscles to relax. "She put some kind of hold on me. How?" "She asked me to tell her what it is to rule. And I said that one commands, and she said I had some unlearning to do." "She hit the mark right there." He nodded for Paul to continue. "She said a ruler must learn to persuade and not to compel. She said he must lay the best coffee hearth to attract the finest men." "How'd she figure your father attracted men like Duncan and Gurney?" Paul shrugged. "Then she said a good ruler had to learn his world's language, that it's different for every world, and I thought she meant that they didn't speak Gallic in Arrakis, but she said that wasn't it at all. She said she meant the language of the rocks and the growing things, the language you don't hear with your ears, and I said that's what Dr. Yue calls the mystery of life." Howat chuckled. "How'd that sit with her?" "I think she got mad. She said the mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience." So I quoted the first law of the Mentat at her. "A process cannot be understood by stopping it. Understanding must move with the flow of the process, must join it and flow with it." That seemed to satisfy her. "He seems to be getting over it. But that old witch frightened him. What did she do?" "Thufir. Will Arrakis be as bad as she said?" "Nothing could be that bad," Howat said and forced a smile. "Take those Fremen, for example, the renegade people of the desert. By first approximation analysis, I can tell you that there are many, many more of them than the Imperium suspects. People live there, lad, a great many people, and..." Howat put a sinewy finger beside his eye. "They hate the Harkonnens with a bloody passion. You must not breathe a word of this, lad. I tell you only as your father's helper." "My father has told me of Salusa Secundus." "Do you know, Thufir? It sounds much like Arrakis. Perhaps not quite as bad, but much like it. We do not rally... we do not really know of Salusa Secundus today," Hawat said. "Only that what it was like long ago, mostly. But what is known? You're right on that score. Will the Fremen help us?" "It's a possibility. I leave today for Arrakis. Meanwhile, you take care of yourself for an old man who's fond of you, hey? Come around here like a good lad and sit facing the door. It's not that I think there's any danger in the castle, it's just a habit I want you to form. Paul got to his feet and moved around the table. You're going today? Today it is, and you'll be following tomorrow. Next time we meet, it'll be in the soil of your new world. He gripped Paul's right arm at the bicep. Keep your knife arm free, hey? And your shield at full charge. He released the arm and patted Paul's shoulder, whirled, and strode quickly to the door. Thufir! Paul called. Howat turned, standing in the open doorway. Don't sit with your back to any doors, Paul said. A grin spread across the seamed old face. That I won't, lad. Depend on it. And he was gone, shutting the door softly behind. Paul sat down where Howat had been, straight into the papers. One more day here. He looked around the room. We're leaving. The idea of departure was suddenly more real to him than it had ever been before. He recalled another thing the old woman had said about the world being the sum of many things. The people, the dirt, the growing things, the moons, the tides, the suns, the unknown sum called nature. A vague summation without any sense of the now. And he wondered, what is the now? The door across from Paul banged open, and an ugly lump of a man lurched through it, preceded by a handful of weapons. Well, Gurney Halleck, are you the new weapons master? Halleck kicked the door shut with one heel. You'd rather I come to play games, I know. He glanced around the room, noting that Howat's men already had been over it, checking, making sure it was safe for the Duke's heir. The subtle code signs were all around. Paul watched the rolling, ugly man set himself back in motion, veer toward the training table with the load of weapons, saw the 9-string balisette slung over Gurney's shoulder, with the multi-pack woven through the strings near the head of the fingerboard. Halleck dropped the weapons on the exercise table, lined them up, the rapiers, the bodkins, the kijals, the slow pellet stunners, the shield belts. The inkvine scar along his jawline writhed as he turned, casting a smile across the room. So you don't even have a good morning for me, young man? You imp. What barb did you sink into old Howat? He passed me in the hall like a man running from his enemy's funeral. Paul grinned. Of all his father's men, he liked Gurney Halleck best. Knew the man's moods and deviltry, his humors, and thought of him more as a friend than a hired sword. Halleck swung the balisette off his shoulder and began tuning it. If you won't talk, you won't. Paul stood, advanced across the room, calling out, Well, Gurney, do we come prepared for music when it's fighting time? So it's sass for our elders today, Halleck said. He tried a chord on the instrument and nodded. Where's Duncan Idaho? Paul asked. Isn't he supposed to be teaching me weaponry? Duncan's gone to lead the second wave to Arrakis. All you have left is poor Gurney, who's fresh out of fight and spoiling for music. He struck another chord and listened to it and smiled. And it was decided in council that you being such a poor fighter, we'd best teach you the music trade so you won't waste your life entirely. Maybe you'd better not sing to me then. I want to be sure how not to do it. Ah ha ha! Gurney laughed, and he swung into Galatian Girls, his multi-pick a blur over the strings as he sang. Oh, the Galatian girls will do it for pearls, and the Iraqine for the water. But if you desire dames like consuming flames, try a Caladan daughter. I have to say that's a pretty good estimation of the music, considering it's right off the cuff. Oh, the Galician girl. Oh, the Galician girls will do it for pearls, and the Iraqine for the water. But if you desire dames like consuming flames, try the Caledonian daughter. Much better. Not bad for such a poor hand with the prick. But if my mother heard you singing a bawdy song like that in the castle, she'd have your ears on the outer wall for decoration. Gurney pulled at his left ear. Poor decoration, too. They having been bruised so much listening to keyholes while a young lad I know practiced some strange ditties on his balisette. So you've forgotten what it's like to find sand in your bed. He pulled a shield belt from the table, buckled it fast around his waist. Then let's fight. Halleck's eyes went wide in mock surprise. So, it was your wicked hand that did the deed. Guard yourself today, young master. Guard yourself. He grabbed up a rapier, laced the air with it. I'm a hell fiend out for revenge. Paul lifted the companion rapier, bent it in his hands, stood on the aiguille 1 foot forward. He let his manners go solemn in a comic imitation of Dr. Yue. What a dolt my father sends me for weaponry. That doltish Gurney Halleck has forgotten the first lesson for a fighting man armed and shielded. Paul snapped the force button at his waist, felt the crinkling skin tinkling of the defensive shield at his forehead and down his back, heard external sounds take on a characteristic shield-filtered flatness. In shield fighting, one moves fast on defense, slow on attack. Attack has the sole purpose of tricking the opponent into a misstep, setting him up for the attack sinister. The shield turns the fast blow, admits the slow cajole. Paul snapped up the rapier, feinted fast, and whipped it back for a slow thrust timed to enter a shield's mindless defenses. Halleck watched the action, turned on the last minute to let the blunted blade pass his chest. Speed, excellent. But you were wide open for the underhanded counter with a slip tip. Paul stepped back, chagrined. I should whap your backside for such carelessness. He lifted a naked cajole from the table and held it up. This, in the hand of an enemy, can let out your life's blood. You're an apt pupil, none better, but I've warned you that not even in play do you let a man inside your guard with death in his hand. Guess I'm not in the mood for it today. Mood? Halleck's voice betrayed his outrage even though through the shield's filtering. What has mood to do with it? You fight when the necessity arises, no matter the mood. Mood's a thing for cattle, or making love, or playing the balisette. It's not for fighting. I'm sorry, Gurney. You're not sorry enough. Halleck activated his own shield, crouched with cajole outthrust in his left hand, the rapier poised high in his right. Now I say guard yourself for true. He leapt high to one side, then forward, pressing a furious attack. Paul fell back, parrying. He felt the field crackling as shield edges touched the repellent each other, sent the electric tingling of the contact along his skin. What's gotten into Gurney? He asked himself. He's not faking this. Paul moved his left hand, dropping his bodkin into his palm from its wrist sheath. You see a need for an extra blade, eh? Is this a betrayal, wondered? Surely not Gurney. Around the room they fought, thrust and parry, feint and counterfeint. The air within their shield bubbles grew stale from the demands on it that the slow interchange along barrier edges could not replenish. With each new shield contact, the smell of ozone grew stronger. Paul continued to block, but now he directed his retreat towards the exercise table. If I can turn him beside the table, I'll show him a trick. One more step, Gurney. Halleck took the step. Paul directed a parry downward, turned, saw Halleck's rapier catch against the table leg. Paul flung himself aside, thrust high with the rapier, and came across Halleck's neckline with the bodkin. He stopped the blade an inch from the jugular. Is this what you seek? Look down, lad. Paul obeyed, saw Halleck's cudgel thrust under the table's edge, the tip almost touching Paul's groin. We'd have joined each other in death. But I'll admit you fought somewhat better than when you were pressed to. You seemed to get into the mood. And he grinned wolfishly, the ink-vine scar rippling along his jaw. The way you came at me, would you really have drawn my blood? Halleck withdrew the cudgel and straightened. If you'd fought one whit beneath your abilities, I'd have scratched you a good one. A scar you'd remember. I'll not have my favorite pupil fall to the first Harkonnen tramp who happens along. Paul deactivated his shield, leaned against the table to catch his breath. I deserve that gurney. But it would have angered my father if you'd hurt me. I'll not have you punished for my failing. As to that, it was my failing too, and you needn't worry about the training scar too. You're lucky you have so few. As to your father, the Duke punished me only if I failed to make a first-class fighting man out of you. And I'd have been failing there if I hadn't explained the fallacy in this mood thing you've suddenly developed. Paul straightened, slipped his bodkin back into his wrist sheath. It's not exactly play we do here. Paul nodded. He felt a sense of wonder at the uncharacteristic seriousness in Halleck's manner, the sobriety intensifying. He looked at the beet-colored ink-vine scar on the man's jaw, remembering the story of how it had been put there by the beast Rabin in a Harkonnen slave pit on Gedi Prime. And Paul felt a sudden shame that he had doubted Halleck even for an instant. It occurred to Paul then that the making of Halleck's scar had been accompanied by pain, a pain as intense, perhaps, as that inflicted by the Reverend Mother. He thrust the thought aside. It chilled their world. I guess I did hope for some play today. Things are so serious around here lately. Halleck turned away to hide his emotions. Something burned in his eyes. There was pain in him, like a blister. All that was left of some lost yesterday that time had pruned off of him. How soon this child must assume his manhood. How soon he must read that form within his mind, that contract of brutal caution to enter the necessary fact on the necessary line. Please list your next of kin. Halleck spoke without turning. I sensed the play in you, lad, and I'd like nothing better than to join in, but this no longer can be play. Tomorrow we go to Arrakis. Arrakis is real. The Harkonnens are real. Paul touched his forehead with his rapier blade held vertical. Halleck turned, saw the salute, and acknowledged it with a nod. He gestured to the practice dummy. Now, we'll work on your timing. Let me see you catch the thing sinister. I'll control it from over here, where I can have full view of the action, and I warn you, I'll be trying new counters today. There's a warning you'd not get from a real enemy. Paul stretched up on his toes to relieve his muscles. He felt solemn in the sudden realization that his life had become filled with swift changes. He crossed to the dummy, slapped the switch on its chest with his rapier tip, and felt the defensive shield forcing his blade away. "On guard!" Halleck called, and the dummy pressed the attack. Paul activated his shield, parried and countered. Halleck watched as he manipulated the controls. His mind seemed to be in two parts, one alert to the needs of the training and the fight, and the other wandering in fly buzz. I'm the well-trained fruit tree, he thought, full of well-trained feelings and abilities, and all of them grafted onto me, all bearing for someone else to pick. For some reason, he recalled his younger sister, her elfin face so clear in his mind, but she was dead now, in a pleasure house for Harkonnen troops. She had loved pansies. Or was it daisies? He couldn't remember. It bothered him that he couldn't remember. Paul counted a slow swing of the dummy, brought up his left hand, and Tresser. That clever little devil, Halleck thought, intent now on Paul's interweaving hand motions. He's been practicing and studying on his own. That's not Duncan's style, and it's certainly nothing I've taught him. This thought only added to Halleck's sadness. I'm infected by mood, he thought. And he began to wonder about Paul, if the boy ever listened fearfully to his pillow throbbing in the night. If wishes were fishers, we'd all cast nets, he murmured. It was his mother's expression, and he always used it when he felt the blackness of tomorrow on him. Then he thought what an odd expression that was to be taking to a planet that had never known seas or fishes. All right. Perfectly on the dot, 11 o'clock. Well, darlings, we've passed another Monday together. It is freezing fucking cold outside. That is why I have up the scarves and I am wearing my silk winter robe. I hope that you all stay warm and have a beautiful couple of weeks. Like I said, I will be posting, of course, on all my spots. But I really am attempting to take a week off, like fully. So if you celebrate all of the holidays of this season, I wish you all the happiness in that. And good night, dear ones. Good night.